Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
Well, hello everybody. But there's no bed of music. Wow, we're sort
I
of
know we have it. We can create our own.
Oh,
this is a silent film, what you didn't know.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network's Anatomy of a Movie. My name is Demetri Panos, and God, it's been like forever since I've been here. I was on walkabout for a while and then came back, and I had to strategize for Force Friday, and now I'm back. And I'm here. I couldn't be more proud and honored to be here because today we have on our slab Transporter Refueled. And what I'm most proud of is this is an action movie, and I have two of the greatest hosts, female hosts. You would think this could be a testosterone-driven type of a podcast, but I like this. This is equality in podcasting, and we are always about equality. And I want to introduce my two fabulous hosts. Why don't we say hello to Marisa far on the right?
Hello, everyone. Thank you,
Sarah,
Demetri.
you're very welcome.
Hello, it's good to be here. It's doing another anatomy.
And it's been so long.
I feel like it's been a long time since I hosted with you two on Anatomy. Wow.
Well, it has been. For me, I mean, it's been like a month.
Just like us three.
And we're being reunited by Transporter.
By Transporter.
Of all the movies.
Oh, and of course, we have the fabulous James doing the, as you like to say, ones and twos in the booth.
Yep.
Taking care of all our technical wizardry. So why don't we get into Transporter Refueled? This is the fourth in a series of films. And we have a brand new transporter by the name of Ed
Skrein.
Is it Skrein? How do you pronounce this last name?
I watched a lot of interviews.
Ed, who was in Game of Thrones.
Right.
There you go. I watched a lot of interviews, and everyone was pronouncing it Skrein.
Skrein. Okay, so Ed Skrein. No disrespect if we got your name wrong. So is Transporter Refueled high octane, or does it limp in at the pumps? Why don't we start off?
I can start. So sure. I first want to say that I am a huge fan of the Transporter franchise. I watched all of the Transporter movies with Jason Statham. Mm-hmm. I tried to go in blocking out the Jason Statham expectations because he obviously was not going to be in this movie. I knew he wasn't even going to be cameoed, and I was really interested to see what they did. After seeing it, I wasn't absolutely in love. It's not my favorite action movie of all time. One of my favorite components was Ed and how he took on this role. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't think I think that they stuck to the Transporter name, hoping to bring in more of an audience to get the commercial appeal. I don't think that this needed to be a Transporter movie. I don't think that it needed to be titled as part of the franchise, but it was. I think that they lived up to, the car was great, loved the hand-to-hand combat that Transporter's famous for. And I liked the idea of putting strong female characters into it, but of course I had some qualms. I like they kept it short, 96 minutes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they had some, for me, this movie had a lot of like good bases. Like, got a strong male who I believe and like. Great. Add some sexy, strong female characters. Fun. You have your driving scenes, your fight scenes. But then some of the story points had me going, a couple of times.
There are a couple. We'll get into that. So, Marisa, what about you? What did you think about Transporter Refueled?
I thought
Retooled.
Overall, for an action movie, it was just a film with some action in it. I think there were some fun moments, some fun key sequences that I actually do want to talk about because visually it was fun to watch. for an action film, if you're going to compare this to the original franchise of Transporters, because we have to, it is part of that whole storyline and characters and whatnot, I can definitely see all the nuances from the first three. That I feel like they pulled certain characteristics, certain things that everyone who was a fan of the original three were going to enjoy in the fourth Refueled. And I definitely saw little key moments here and there. Overall, as a film, it's obviously not the strongest action film, but overall entertaining. I don't think the storyline really sold me. I think they focus more on the action and just the pretty cars and the pretty girls to watch, and a pretty boy to, kick ass.
well, they put the materials
More than the story.
for you to.
Yeah,
this was a for the looks movie.
Absolutely.
When it came to casting, style, and direction. You can kind of almost have this movie on mute, and it gives you almost the same feel. Maybe
Pretty
adding the
much.
sound effect.
Yeah,
I think that our second time around we should do that.
Well, I don't think there'll be a second time around for me. Not that this movie made me angry. I'll go on record as saying that. Okay, I think this movie has one major fatal flaw, and I'm going to get to that in a second. I think that Ed Skrein had very big shoes to fill.
Right.
I've seen all the Transporter movies prior. I got to work on the distribution of one of them, Transporter 3, which, was probably the weakest of the bunch at the time.
Until now.
Until now.
Well, but interesting stuff about it. I started wondering, like, okay, why is there a fourth? And I needed to. I went in this through like a business aspect and what's going on here. Why was there the fourth? Why did they feel the need to tell another story? They couldn't get Jason Statham, who I think is a really key component, because I started to ask myself, what makes the Transporter movies popular? And, when I was looking at them, neither one of them domestically ever broached $100 million. They were never huge box office things, but they are. The original Transporter is the movie that broke Jason Statham.
Yeah.
And I started to look at, because I hadn't seen a Transporter movie in a little while, so I just wanted to use, I said, what is it about the Transporter movies that is really fun? And when you look at the first two, you had a really solid director doing that, Louis Leterrier, who went on to do things like Now You See Me and such. You had Jason Statham, who has... this is a guy that oozes a lot of charisma. You had some great fight scenes and some great car chase scenes, but it was the fight scenes that there was a panache to them. There was even humor to them. I rewatched there was the mansion scene in the first movie, and one of the key things
Before the explosions?
There was a mansion scene in the first movie. One of the elements, the start of that scene was big in the trailer. It's when the doorbell rings, the guy gets up and he looks through the peephole, and it's Jason Statham, and he comes up and he drop kicks down the door. Okay, that was huge. And then there's like this electro beat music that's going on as Jason Statham's fighting these guys, and there's like, you got some wire fu going on, you got a little bit of slow-mo, but nothing that was over the they never overused editing, they never overused the slow-mo. It was just, and the fight scenes, like, you would laugh going, wow, okay, that was cool. And Jason Statham was able to carry it off in the first two Transporter movies, and there was some good stuff in the third as well. This one didn't have that for me, but I think, though, too, going to what I said at the top, fatal flaw is... we have had a spring and summer of movies that have included Furious 7, Mad Max Fury Road, and before my last movie, prior to coming back, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Each of those movies featured cars, lots of fighting, and the latter two really hinged a lot of their marketing on practical effects, practical fights, practical Tom Cruise doing his own stunts. Fury Road, which I just recently rewatched, and it's just amazing how it holds up. You had the practical car chases and the races and the explosions and the crashes. This movie coming out after seeing that, I think really hurt, because this movie seems to be stuck in first gear compared to the ones that I just talked about. To me, anyways.
I agree.
Had they moved this movie to January, February, when it's really distanced itself from a lot of action movies, it may have done... Maybe people would look at it a little bit differently.
Well, it would have had maybe a similar route to... I mean, I like Kingsman infinitely better than this, but they did go with that route.
Yeah.
It is a kind of twist on a spy movie that they put towards the beginning of the year when things are a little bit slower. And they also put this movie, Transporter 2, in a slow pocket of the year, but it's a slow pocket because people have just been fully energized by the summer movies.
Right.
So this movie, I think if they wanted to be more successful, would have had to come out, before Kingsman, because that one really stole the heart of a lot of people.
Yeah, and again, if you come out in August is a dumping ground, and I think this year more than some past years, true dumping ground. It was a pretty crappy box office in August, if not one of the lowest August.
This month.
It was also, it was
August
just crazy. It went from, as you mentioned, Demetri, Mission Impossible was still in like the top 5. Then you have movies like The Transporter. Then you have Man from U.N.C.L.E., Agent whatever.
47.
It was so many things. It was just loaded with kind of spy movies, and now it's loaded with half horror, half like religious films. It is the strangest thing.
Can I
throw in Walk in the Woods?
You mentioned Agent 47. I have to say, so we emails just a little behind the scenes about Anatomy of the Movie. So these emails will come out about what's going to be on schedule, and it came out that we were going to be doing Transporter Refueled, and Marisa writes back. And now I had just come back. I was suffering from jet lag, and I read Marissa's email, and it says, "Yeah, just saw Transporter. All I could say is that it was better than Agent 47." I said, "Wow, what a glowing review! I can't wait to run to the theater to see Transporter Refueled." I thought it was hysterical.
Agent 47 was pretty low for me this year.
Gotcha.
But going back to Transporter, so I just think that had they moved the release date, maybe there would, because this was pretty. It was a pretty high octane summer when it came to this sort of kind of movie. Again, the director, Camille Delamade, he did a very, I think Phil and I broke down, he did the last Paul Walker movie,
Brick
Mansions, which he did a really capable job, and I can understand how they may have picked him to do this. Well, Luc Besson had done Brick Mansions as well. This movie didn't have that. It didn't have that kinetic energy. There were a couple of scenes that I thought were clever, but when I started looking at some of the fight scenes in like in the early Statham ones, number one, you had Statham, and he was in Furious 7. He's gone on to be this big star. This one didn't have that kineticism that those had.
Speaking to the fight scenes, I'm trying to go through and stock up what we saw in this movie and which ones rate as the most memorable. And for me personally, one of the most memorable Transporter fights is at the very beginning when he fights people using a shopping bag, right. Or like a little gift bag, and overall, it wasn't anything extraordinarily new. It was entertaining to watch, but it kind of bothers me, or it makes it not one of my favorite movies, because my most memorable scene is a scene that doesn't do anything for the plot.
Very
so it was entertaining, but it doesn't have any stakes.
Yeah. Well,
it's at the beginning of the film, you know what's going to happen.
Right.
It's just to illustrate skills, and it was entertaining, but I should walk away really more invested in a key fight between our hero and our villain.
I agree with you. Since we're talking about these favorite scenes,
the fight scenes, actually, what I've noticed with the original franchise and then this one, he never really shoots a gun, only when absolutely necessary. And his the character, the transporter, he always used weapons of convenience. He used the environment. He used that as a weapon to help him fight, which I thought was amazing. Like, even how they established that fact in the first three. And we had a lot of that in the fourth. So I appreciate it. That's what I liked about the fighting, that every weapon he used was usually from the environment that was already there.
I agree, but that mansion scene, and again, just YouTube it. If you haven't seen the original Transporter in a while,
go watch
It's just, watch him, or at least YouTube that scene. But he does, there's a great scene. These thugs are playing poker, and there's a gun on the table, and Jason Statham as the transporter pulls the tablecloth or whatever, and then a gun goes flying up in the air. And again, what makes the shot cool is, number one, they use slow motion, but it's done very judiciously. And the gun comes up, and you see, and Statham reaches up, he gets it. He uses a gun in the scene, although he doesn't carry one. But the entire fight scene was just done, like I said, it had a style to it. And over here, I didn't feel that it had that sense of style. My favorite fight scene, I felt, and yet it was a scene that ended up being marred, was the scene where he comes out of the nightclub.
Okay.
He comes out of the nightclub, gets in the car, and then thugs surround the car, and he opens up the sunroof and he says, "Don't touch anything." He puts the car in neutral, gets out, and he starts fighting people as the car, and he's like, he's gotta knock out these thugs before the car gets to to this fence. I thought, I was like, you know what? That's the ticking clock, is the car in neutral. I said, this is really clever. I liked it. I liked the way that it was shot. But then they had to cut back into the car. Yeah. And this is what bothered me.
Girls' reactions.
Well, yeah, it's like, how can we trust him? I'm like, well, he seems to have done pretty well for you
and
so far.
He's kicking everybody's ass right now.
Really, is the car going to hit the fence that hard?
Yeah,
is it really that dangerous?
Yeah, I was just like,
do you want to get out and fight these guys?
That's what I was getting
really
at. I'm like, do you see what he's doing? Like, instead you should be in awe. It's like, should we go out and help him? But no, just stay in and do it. But I felt that the mechanics of that scene were pretty cool, because you had the ticking clock, which is the car, and do we get to the thing? Now let's talk about the car for a second. What an hour and a half ad for Audi.
More Audi.
Audi, is this a special grade of Audi? Because it is very resistant to dents.
S8i.
But it's really resistant to dents.
7 to 8 of them throughout
to dents and paint scratches, and the only way you can destroy it is if you blow it up yourself. Nobody else can blow it up. It's got to be by your hand. I was like, this car can knock off fire hydrant tops without a scratch. I was like, this is amazing. Audi must be really, really happy.
And the funny thing is,
I'm fine with that. I was fine with the car.
It's a very pretty car. The funny thing is, Agent 47, another action film we just recently dissected, all the cars they use are Audi. So Audi's doing something.
Audi's become like the BMW. Well, it's like, if you can't get BMW, go Audi.
No, it's kind of. I almost said something, but I feel like I'm going to get in trouble.
Well, Frank started off in a BMW. The first one he drove.
The location they're in is very it's international.
So I am going to start poking a little bit of holes in our action scenes too, because we're in that vein right now. Because I have a couple things to address.
Okay.
There is a point when action movies use creativity with different elements as a fighting weapon that makes something exciting. There's a line though, because you can't substitute creativity when there's an easier, smarter solution for your action hero. And I'm saying this specifically there was a scene, and while visually I was entertained, I couldn't help but thinking in the back of my mind, this is kind of stupid. Because on the boat, he uses a life ring. A life ring to fight people when there is a whole wall of crazy swords. I understand, interesting to use the life ring. But no one in their right mind, when they're fighting for their life, in my opinion, is going to choose the life ring over the extremely accessible sword.
Well, and Sarah, I think that's an amazing point, and here's why. because I felt a lot of the fight scenes in this particular movie felt more Jackie Chan than they felt Transporter.
It felt very Rush Hour 2 when they were on that yacht.
Yeah, it felt, and hence, like, because Jackie Chan will use props, but to more of a Buster Keaton comedic kind of effect.
way, yeah.
Instead of going for the swords. And I felt the same way. I'm like, this is more Jackie Chan, and this isn't like...
I was like, it's interesting, and it's kind of funny, but you're telling me that this soldier who is hard as steel, not Jackie Chan, who can pull off using any weapon because it's more like a goofy train
still
of
make you
thought.
laugh.
Right, and he would use his whole life ring. He would use that.
Yes, this is not that style, and instead it rings to me as like, use the sword, dude. It's, and also in that vein, there were other characters. I never needed him to touch a gun. I'm not saying that because I understand that that's not Transporter style for him to touch a gun. But there were other characters who could have used guns much more often that were on the good side. Whether it be his dad, once his dad was really pulled into the action, and there's dead people with guns lying all around. Why can't you pick that up? The women were introduced using guns.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they dropped it. Then they hardly used them at all for the rest of the film. And I'm like, you introduced these women as people who were hardcore, accurate shots and willing to go there. Stick with that.
Yeah, no,
Stick with the characters you create. Like, fun ideas everywhere. Like, I get it.
There were fun ideas everywhere.
But stick to your characters.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there were fun ideas. And I did like... I did like that plotting with the women who wanted to take revenge about these people who stole them from their families, put them into this prostitution. I think it could be a pretty serious topic matter. And again, I understand we are talking about a Transporter movie. However, they went down that path because this was supposed to be an emotional thing. Like, there's a scene where Frank is with the leader, Anna, and she talks about her tragic story. I felt at that point, yeah, you're going for the emotional part, but I'm not
feeling it.
I'm not feeling it so much. And I liked her, and I liked that story. I agree with you. I felt that there could have been more of an emotional edge and stakes of for our character. And, and then I got a very, the man with the car is back, and this time he's bringing along his dad. Wait, that's the man in the hat. The man with the hat is back. And wait, that's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And then when his dad called him Junior, I was like, okay, all bets are off. I'm like, well, don't do that.
I think they definitely did a lot of references back to other previous action films that we would have already enjoyed, that maybe enjoy this one, because in a way it is I don't want to say reboot, but a continuation in a way.
I want to bring it back to because you brought up two things I think we probably, Marissa and I both have stuff to say about. You brought up the women, and you brought up the dad. So I'll say one thing about the women first, because it's Transporter. I expect there to be beautiful women.
I expect it to at least be one.
Yes.
Right.
Because in every film there's at least one.
Really liked them for the most part.
Yeah.
They were tough. They were like just ready to go. They had a full out plan. They were kind of ruthless from the very beginning. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. I don't know whether to trust them, whether to like them. And then the part where they lost me, and it was just a chunk, and it's really close to her heartfelt monologue, is when all of the leading women decided to then sleep
with the father,
and with the Transporter. And I was like, it was kind of, this is a weird reference, but this is what I kind of think of. It kind of missed like the Pretty Woman moment for me, where like she is a hooker but she doesn't kiss people.
A hooker with
right.
Like
they're all hookers with hearts.
But there's like a line of intimacy that they see as different.
Right.
And like that always hit me when I watched Pretty Woman. Like she couldn't kiss him because like that was the one thing she kept for herself.
Right.
And this I was like, okay, ladies, you're really ruthless and you got a mission. And I'm trying, and on one hand you are telling me with monologues that you've been treated like trash for your bodies, and you just met these guys yesterday, and one of them is what?
Yeah,
No, I know. I do.
I know you're chomping
about
at
this.
so don't I. But I think on a little bit of a different level. But Marisa, you're chomping at the bit.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be.
It's just like I was like, ugh.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Really?
I had issues with most of the females in the blonde wigs. Not Anna. I mean, the audience got to spend more time with Anna, so like I can kind of understand her character a bit. But the other three, I don't remember their names. I don't really remember their stories, other than the fact that they were picked from their parents and whatnot, and they had a crap lifestyle. But we didn't spend enough time with them to feel anything.
No.
And going off of you, Sarah, saying that their characters started off with guns. Well, if you think about it, their characters ended with guns.
Yes.
They were shot down by guns. So it's like it all came full circle for them. And then not to jump too far ahead, but the very end scene when Anna's given all the money back.
Sure.
And it was to all the families. It took me just a second to realize, oh, that was this girl's family. Oh,
Right.
that was this girl's family. I don't remember them. They
were never introduced prior to that scene.
Enough.
Yeah, I didn't find that scene had the payoff. I
Yes,
agree.
and
It
then
did not have the payoff that
I expected.
I think they wanted.
Yes, I expected the transporter to sleep with at least one, because every movie he does, and every movie he figures out a way to get his shirt off, whether it be fighting or willingly, during sex. But so I expected that from him. From the father, it was like, okay, yeah, it's just a party because he's surrounded by girls. I found it weird how the father and the son were both sleeping with all the girls at the same times in practically adjoining rooms.
Well, okay.
And at the end of that, I'm like, really? What?
Well, it just showed us. I was like, oh, go
no.
ahead.
Well, it's funny because here's my take is two ways, and I'm gonna focus a little bit more on the father, but before we get to that scene, let's talk about the scene that precedes it, because this is why I just started to laugh. Now, it's always fun when you can go to a movie and take something away from, with that movie. You learn something. So I learned something very valuable outside of Audis don't dent and or scratch. I learned that cobwebs and sugar, sugar can disinfect, and cobwebs will coagulate blood. Now, one of these women got a gut wound. She got shot in the gut with the bullet. And she was down for the count. She was practically dead. For an hour. They couldn't take her to a doctor. Practically dead. They were almost about to give her last rites. And the father comes in and says, get me some hot water. Give me some vodka. He goes, get me some sugar. We'll disinfect it and find cobwebs. And damn it, did she came out with cobwebs galore.
We're in a building.
We're in a spider
filled
nest.
with warehouse.
And so he comes back, he puts the sugar in the cobwebs, first off, he takes out the bullet. Okay. And that was like, I was like going, oh, okay, that's pretty severe. So takes out the bullet, puts the sugar on the cobwebs, puts it on. And I was like, okay, it's going to take a while. The next scene, those two things, not only do they coagulate and disinfect, but they have healing powers of 10 to 100, because the next scene, that same girl, she's like, they're doubling up on this guy. It's her. I was like going, wait a minute, is this the girl that was just on death's bed? I go, and now she's sleeping with the dad? I was like, God bless the dad, man. He knows how to heal these women. The power of healing. I was like, what the hell is going on here?
Power of sugar and cobwebs.
But if that wasn't comical, what sort of kind of bothered me is the father was setting up what I felt was sort of a sweet relationship with, I think it was Maria or Gina. Gina. I think it was Gina.
Again.
Sorry, I don't.
Do we remember these girls? No.
Well, yeah, and so... Yeah, it was Gina, and I'm like going, and it was sort of kind of nice, and I was like going, okay, he's in bed with two women. I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, is he trying to sleep? Is he trying to be in a relationship with this woman? And then at the end, when Gina, because she strangles the henchwoman, she strangles the other lady. And like, he's like, oh, stay with me. And he's like trying to be very sympathetic. But I'm like, dude, you just like two-timed. You were like double time. You were in bed with two other women right next to your son. Like,
threesome.
You were having a threesome right after you pulled the bullet out of one of those women's gut. And I was like, holy cow, what is going on here? So, but remember, folks, sugar is a disinfectant. Cobwebs will coagulate.
Yeah, I'm going to have to try that one at some point.
The next time we get shot.
I was partially convinced. I was so... The dad character... Okay, first about the dad character. Really liked the father-son relationship that they established in the beginning, personally.
I liked it too.
I thought the
Same here.
Also, like when they had
some
dinner.
kind of
Ray
relief.
Stevenson was the dad, and I liked him.
Really
Yep.
liked their just dad-son scenes in the cars, at his house. Really enjoyed them. And then I, like, halfway through, I was like... Is this dad involved? Is he like the boss of this? Is he like creating this mission? Because I'm so confused by like how involved he is, especially when he was like acting as the pilot and was doing really well and ended up in the cargo hold. I'm like, so you are a spy, which means like you're ahead of the game, or are you? I was just like so confused.
It was
by
such
his like knowledge and like how involved he was, or if he really was just continuously getting kidnapped. And I was like, and if you're a spy that's this great, how are you always getting kidnapped?
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Well, see, and that's going to lead me to another point of which I felt this film could have used, which the Statham movies had to an extent. But going on off that point again, like the father was. It was like he fell in love with his kidnappers. And then all of a sudden he's in on their plot. And he's like, well, son, we have to help these people and, have to help these women. Then he gets kidnapped again. Now, to me, another issue with this movie is its lack of humor. I didn't find this movie to be that...
I thought the humor was twisted.
Yeah, I just
the humor was very twisted. I mean, these girls just pretended to kill him. Like, we injected you. You're going to die in 24 hours. Oh, sorry. That was just a prank.
Right, that was like the whole escape to New York.
Now I'm going to sleep with you. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'm over it.
But yeah, exactly. He's like, you kidnapped my father.
The scene where his father...
Okay. I forgive you. You just tried to kill me. Whatever.
But then the father gets kidnapped again. And that's the perfect time for, like, Frank Martin to go... Seriously, Dad, you got kidnapped again, and I gotta come and save your bacon? Like, I felt like there at least could have been a line of dialogue.
Dad, you're a horrible spy.
Dad, you're awful.
You're a horrible spy.
He goes, once again, I gotta come and save you again, Dad. Like, there wasn't.
Or at least he could have had the lines like, "That's why I'm retired."
Yeah, that's
something
why,
to add to that.
And each time was sort of kind of dire, like you brought up. We just injected him with this thing, so they injected him, but every scene after, I was like, shouldn't you be getting sick?
That's what I thought.
I was like going.
That's what I thought.
Instead, you're making the moves on this woman, and it's like
no. For everything they were doing, I was consciously aware. I was like, man, he's really energetic. He should be like getting lethargic right now.
Also,
getting fatigued.
Also, how did the other guy who was injected on the plane not die?
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah, I don't know.
The blonde guy who was
maybe he had the
poisoned.
nearby.
Maybe.
I thought it was poison. I thought it was just like a knockout drug.
Again, I think there were just so many different elements from all the original movies that were in this one. Right. I mean, we had the injection. That was from the second one. We had the plane chasing scene, which I believe was in the first one. Right. We had, certain, the whole, I hate being on time. I hate being late and always being on time. That was from the second one, and the whole reference. I don't like when the plans change. That was from the first one. So a lot of nuances. From the original.
The other interesting thing too is that they set this in 2010. So
my question is why?
I don't know.
Did that have any relevance to anyone?
No, I couldn't. I was trying to figure it out. I was trying to figure that out too. I honestly don't know why they couldn't have made it the present. I don't.
I just took it pretty much as the present because I was like,
okay.
Yeah, outside of like the iPhones, which were not 6s or anything like that, but
But they weren't even the technology. I think this movie was more flashy than actual story and character depth. They had fancy cars, fancy electronics, and computers.
It looked real pretty.
It was very flashy,
perfect.
yeah.
Well, let's talk. I want to talk a little bit more about Ed Skrein. What did you think about him as taking over the mantle from Jason Statham?
I think I liked him in this movie. I did. I really liked him playing the alpha male. I think that I I believed that he could hold his own in a fight and come out on top. I believe that he's appealing for like the women and whatnot. And I believe that he was intelligent. So I liked his character. As I said, did this need to be a Transporter movie for me? Not really. Like, besides the fact that it's a guy who prefers hand-to-hand combat versus guns, like, he didn't need to be the Transporter. They also named him Frank. Like, I didn't need any of that. We talked about, this is a guy from Game of Thrones. He played Dario Naharis. He was in one season,
3 episodes,
something like
that, right? Left
the show to do this role, and someone else went on to Game of Thrones and replaced him. We can probably debate about this, but
you and I were talking.
Yeah, we're talking about it
because a good conversation.
I think that for his career, like, this might have been a good move. I don't think it was a great move because this movie didn't make the money or have the reviews that the original Transporters do. But as I told Demetri earlier, I think what they've done with the role of Dario Naharis as of now on Game of Thrones isn't anything too special. He doesn't make my top 20 characters on Game of Thrones. There are so many people that are more important or more interesting or more dynamic to me personally. So this, to me, I was like, he took on a movie. He is the face of it. It's gotten him a lot of publicity. He's done his own interviews. He's in the forefront. There's articles about him being the next action star. He's obviously gotten more movies in the lineup coming out. So he is putting himself, and I don't think, personally, I haven't heard of anyone seeing this movie being like, the reason this movie failed is because of Ed. No. Most people really like him in it. And although I think the movie in general people are missing Jason Statham, I don't think people are really being like, Ed versus Jason Statham. It's like Transporter without Jason Statham, Transporter with. Like, they're not being put head to head. Versus when you saw, like, movies like when they recast the Hulk, like Ed Norton, people were putting them face to face more than the role. And I think that this movie hasn't hurt him. I think it's just putting him more in the spotlight. He looks completely different than in Game of Thrones. I think people know his actual name more and aren't just calling him Dario. Like, good for you, dude.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of going off of you, I didn't mind Ed in this role. I think he definitely has the physical look and the stamina to portray this character. My thing is about just the way he portrayed this character. I personally liked Jason Statham's portrayal of the Transporter in the original, because that character had way more heart, and it seemed like he had way more layers in the original, and he had more compassion for all the people he was transporting. Whereas this one, the Refueled, I feel like he was constantly suckered in by everyone. It wasn't on his own accord. It was, I'll help you because you just kidnapped my dad. I'll help you because you just gave me a pity story.
But that's rather than script more than
I
think it goes also with the storyline that adds to the character. The character in the original franchise, and sorry, I keep bringing it up, but his character would always feel for and go back for whoever he's transporting before he would learn the backstories of the characters. That was on his own accord. That's because he wanted it. And in the Refueled, he would only stick around because people were pretty much begging him or giving him a reason why he should constantly still be helping him.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. But I also believe too, because none of these Transporter movies are like very so plot intensive, right? I mean, they are in a sense B action movies, but to your point about Jason Statham, I think he was able to carry it off actor wise, as he can play a little bit more sympathetic towards the cause, that they gave him more opportunity to, I think, than this script allowed at Skrein to do. Now, I don't know, for me, again, when you go back, if you do watch the other Transporter movies and you at least look at some of the fight scenes on YouTube, you can see various scenes, which I did, and there is there is an on-screen presence that Jason Statham has. It's just it's undeniable, whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. But you really like I'll even say like in the Expendables, you know, he's not the main character, but you still like Jason Statham's character in the Expendables because he's good. Ed Skrein, I think, has a little. I don't want to come down on the guy because it was weird after watching the movie and trying to find research. After I researched him as a person, I want to support him as an actor because I think I like this guy's philosophies, and I think that he can just become better, and I wouldn't mind seeing him because I really do like, from a personal level, he's been through a lot of trials and tribulations as a man, and I think he's using that to grow as an actor. And there's some things I want to talk to you about when it comes to acting. I just don't think in this movie it's sort of kind of like when you changed Sean Connery to George Lazenby, you were used to this great, and don't kill me, I'm not saying that this is better than a James Bond movie, but one of the reasons people couldn't really stomach George Lazenby as James Bond, and the grosses really dipped, even though On Her Majesty's Secret Service is a great Bond story. We didn't have a great story here, and it's sort of kind of hard to switch out a guy who really owns that role.
Yeah.
He really took that role, and it's his. It's hard to do.
I think I just want to say, like, at the end of that, I had a harder time connecting to this portrayal of the Transporter than I did the first three.
And I'll say that I'm going to throw this out there because, you know, we're all going to have different opinions, but I do want to point that I think he was put in a different situation story-wise than Jason Statham was. Because on one hand, if you look at his character arc, it's about a guy who goes to do a job, but the twist is that this time his father, who he's supposed to have the longest connection with, has been kidnapped by his client. And then so guess what, guy? Your clients have kidnapped your dad and are gonna kill him. But by 3/4 of the way through, you have to completely forgive them and have sex with one.
Right.
And then really go after the bad guys. Like, that's, you know, are you playing towards the, like, oh, I'm gonna go and do what's best for my client, or you're gonna play like these Hostel, where these people have kidnapped your dad and they're gonna kill him? Like, that is just like not a fun place to be in.
Yeah, I agree, and you bring up a point too about our villain too. Your hero is only as strong as your villain, and I didn't think ultimately that the villain was that great. I mean, he is a villain in the sense that yes, he does horrible things, and you know, but we don't other than the fact that he, like, at the beginning of the movie, he comes up to a square, shoots all these other guys down, and he says, okay, I'm taking over the business. That's about as violent as he got as a villain. And then the rest of it is, there was no, like, we go, and then 10 years later, he has shorter hair, and these people are exacting revenge on him, but we didn't, yes, it's bad that they took him through, but we didn't really see how awfully he treated this Anna. Like, Anna was taken away from her family, and I wanted to see, like, she was really, in order for the villain to work, we have to see that villain being a bad guy. We really have to see him being the villain that he's portrayed as, other than the villain who's a victim, because all this money's being stolen from him.
Yeah.
Also,
other than
you guys, were we supposed to? I was a little confused. Are we supposed to already know their connection, or is that completely new?
Whose connection?
The transporters with the villain in, like, the army.
Other than they told us.
Okay.
Because the Transporter's only sole job is, you know, it's been established that he only transports whatever, whether it be items or people. And that's how he got caught up in the whole thing. It was just, that's pretty much the only connection.
I was just really confused because, like, they were hinting at, like, him being, he was in this army unit, and his army unit or something got contracted by an evil guy, and he tried to resist. But I was like, I remember watching it and going in my head, I was like, am I supposed to remember this from another movie? Is this like a reference? Like, was this mentioned in 1, 2, or 3? Like, am I supposed to know what they're talking about, or is this completely new?
Yeah, and it was like our bad guy confused. Automatically knew, oh, I know who's helping him out. I'm like, how? You don't see him in any pictures? It's like, did he drive an Audi during the war in Fallujah? Like, what? I couldn't figure out the connection there.
Still might
I want to go back to Ed Skrein, and again, this is one of the things that I sort of respected, and you being our, acting and such. I want to know what you think about this, and if this is a philosophy that perhaps you adapt. He was asked, as it just makes sense, how did you feel about stepping into the shoes of Jason Statham, who really made this his own? And, he went, and he was very, straight shooting. He said, no, I wasn't, I didn't go in with trepidation. I didn't go in really with fear. This doesn't mean I didn't prepare intensively and work really hard before the auditions and the film, obviously, but I concentrate on myself. I concentrate on working hard, doing the best I can, and putting my best performance in. If you're in athletics, you don't think about the person next to you. You think about your form, your technique, your breathing. There's no point becoming preoccupied with things that are not helpful. So I really didn't feel any pressure or trepidation or anything like that. It really wasn't in my mind. I really liked how he sort of he put this...
He centered himself.
But he compared it to athletics. And I like this because when you're acting, and you can attest to this more than me, where he says you don't think about you think about your form, right? Your technique and your breathing, right? And so what are your thoughts on what he's going on as like approaching a role?
I mean, I think that he seems to have done his homework on the role, be as physically and mentally prepared as possible, on not comparing to Jason Statham. The way I view what it says is, you know what? I think that acting can be harder than people make it out to be. You're already embodying someone else. It's probably a lot harder to try embodying someone else who's embodying someone else. It's just a whole nother layer and screen in front of the believability for the audience. So I think that it probably suited him really well to make this role his own and not try and mimic what Jason Statham did, because you're different people. Right. But he sounds, and from what I've also read, he seems like really charismatic, family friendly, good guy, and it's great to see that he also respects the work. And
I mean, that's very interesting how he said form and technique and breathing, because those really help with fighting and sparring. I've been in martial arts, and I know, having a good strong form helps with your balance. It helps you physically move around the environment that you're in, and also breathing helps allow the oxygen to help make a punch or a kick more effective. So I definitely can see that aspect within the fighting. The fighting aspect for him.
So, and then I'm going to take this a step further, because this is where I started. And again, I got this interview. You can find it online. This is what I'm referencing. One Room with a View, it's called. OneRoomWithAView.com. I found this interview on, and he was asked just further. He goes, so you had no doubts going into this role? And he's like, well, he goes, yes, I definitely didn't have doubts. When I go to an audition, I try my best. After that, I might not get it. I might learn something, and after that, I'll move on. Okay, so, I mean, it's a very healthy attitude.
He just seems like a very, from everything I've heard of him, he sounds very confident and healthy, and
I like this.
Not weighted down by everything around him. He just seems to try and focus.
I like his mentality, because in another interview also Ed mentioned that Game of Thrones helped start his career, and then this is kind of he said the Transporters is more of a baby steps, where when he's going to perform Ajax in the upcoming Deadpool film, he says those are going to be stepping stones. He said with every project he's just moving ahead in life, and I was like, that's a really good mentality to have. When he's like, I understand he hasn't done a lot of action films, and this is definitely one of the earlier projects of his that we're seeing and what we'll see in the future from him, it's definitely baby steps for him.
Yeah, I
in his
agree.
career.
And again, just again,
You say
pulling
baby
from
steps.
this.
I say leaps.
Yeah, well,
He said baby steps,
Yeah,
so I mean, he is fairly humble, so.
Yeah, and well, again, he goes, my priority, and this is where I really started to like pay attention. My priority is the well-being and health of my family and friends. There are real things happening in my life and my friends' lives that are sad things. That's what keeps me up at night. That's what fills me with worry and trepidation. This? No way. He goes, the franchises I've been a part of, the big things I've done, none of them are bigger than that. And I find that very, very, that is humbling. Like, because I found out as a youth, as a teenager, he was somewhat of a ruffian in London, so much so that he got into a type of a fight where he got stabbed. He was really like, and he's like, going on in life, he's like, he was asked, do you think that helped you? Would you? He goes, look, it definitely wasn't the right path. He goes, but it helped me as a person. It helped me as a person and I think as an actor, but I have a different perspective on life. And I really do like that he is humble. I really do like that he looks at these acting opportunities, whether he's in an indie film, which he says, I love being in indie art house movies. They're great. He goes, some of them nobody's ever going to see. He goes, but that's okay. He goes, I can do that. I can be in a Transporter movie. I can be in Deadpool. But I like the fact, he goes, he likes uncertainty when he doesn't know what his next role is going to be, but he's going to try it out. He's enjoyed being and stepping into this role. I really find that is fantastic. He never saw a Transporter movie before going into this. He said he did a lot of homework. And then he said, great, now I've seen them all. Now I can throw that away. He goes, but at least I know what they're about. And I just from this, and I think, you've sort of swayed me, Sarah, because before when we had the conversation, I was like, wow, leaving Game of Thrones, that's a lot of eyeballs on you. That's a lot of people seeing you weekly in the States, pirated overseas, whatever. It's just a lot of people watching
even
you.
in the States.
In the States.
Highly pirated.
Not that I condone piracy, or not at all. Nay. But I'm just saying there's a lot of eyeballs and attention paid to Game of Thrones when it's on, and I'm like, wow, could this been, going to a Transporter movie? But after reading this, after having our healthy discussion here, yeah, I can see this guy making his bones and trying to be better, and he takes care of his family and his friends. And he says when he went to Deadpool, he goes, that was a completely different experience working on a 20th Century Fox film other than even a Transporter movie. And he goes, but I brought my family to Vancouver with me to do this. And he's like, I can only control the pre-production and production. Once that's done, because then it's up to them to put the movie together, and it's up to the audience to...
I gotta give it to Transporters just in general. If you think about it, maybe the story or the cinematography or whatever aren't strong, but the Transporter, just the story and the franchise in general, it can really help launch people's careers. I mean, look at what happened to Jason Statham after all these films. And Jason is now one of the most sought-out action stars.
Although, according to the Transporter people, he is not worth $11 million for a Transporter movie.
But besides that, Jason's had an amazing action career after these movies and kind of before, but Transporters has really established him as an action
That was the one.
star.
I mean, he's
and look what Transporters is doing for Ed. It's putting him in the spotlight, giving him experience, and now opening up all these other doors of opportunities, maybe for more action films, maybe for just more films in general. So I'll give it to Transporter.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, I think for him, it is like Game of Thrones was one stepping stone. Transporter is another one. Yeah. Deadpool, we'll see what the residuals come out after that movie and see how he is as Ajax. And right now, everything we've been seeing about Deadpool, the movie looks like it could be a lot of fun to watch. But again, I think what happened with me anyways is that I have a newfound respect for this guy, because in all honesty, I had a hard time when I looked him up on IMDb and I found out that he was in Game of Thrones, I was like, who the hell is he on Game of Thrones? And when if you go to IMDb and you find him as to who he played, right? And you, Darian, and you click on Dario, and you click on that character's name, his replacement guy pops up. They don't have any pictures of Ed Skrein, even though it's Ed Skrein, even though it's him in the credits. And so I was like, maybe they got it mixed up because that's not him.
No, he was in it for a tad bit.
Yeah,
looks very different. Long hair.
Yeah, he has long hair and such. So I do have a newfound respect for him, and I do look forward to seeing him in some other movies. So I want to go off and start talking maybe too a little bit about what did we think about the direction of this film. This is again, this guy did Brick Mansions, which I enjoyed a little bit more than this. But what did you think about Camille's direction of this film?
I mean, as far as not talking about the script anymore, plot holes, I feel like the fight scenes were energetic. I thought that when fights were happening, they were fairly paced. I wasn't extremely exhilarated or caught up in it. But so the pace was like fine. That's what I will give it. Like overall, like action scenes interesting. Your cuts too, like for instance when they were cutting from the editing for the fire hydrants going off by one, there was some flair thrown in there. Nothing that and this might be just because we saw movies like Mad Max and like Mission Impossible where they really took the cinematography and the action in a very visual way that was incredible. So now the bar has been raised a little bit, at least for now. And, so it just passed off as, okay, cool, great. Nothing that I went, wow, iconic. Wow, this sequence, that shot. So, but I wouldn't give it that he did a bad job. Yeah. It just...
I agree.
It's a hard time of the season.
I go back to, I think, had this been released in February, maybe we'd see it with different eyes.
Right. I mean, if they released it at that time, they're starting Academy Awards season, this could be considered a palate cleanser in a way during that. I like the pacing. It was, there wasn't a scene that I felt went too long or too short. And especially for action, it kept my attention the whole time. And that's what I enjoyed about it, because the original Transporters, I do admit there are some scenes that it's just straight up dialogue, and you kind of like, okay, let's punch some people, and then, but this film, I think there was a good balance of some comedy, some action, and there were scenes that you could breathe after everything. And what I mostly enjoyed about this film were the fight scenes. The actual physical fight scenes, because that's way more appealing for me to watch.
I agree. I think he did okay. I mean, to me, I thought Brick Mansions was I think there was more kineticism in there. It didn't seem as bland. I mean, this is a man, too, this director. He comes from being an editor, and he worked on Taken 3, and he worked on Transporter 3, So I think as an editor, I think it helps. I don't think he over-edited his movie, which is weird because he worked with this Olivier Megaton, who I'm not a fan of at all. And he never met an edit he didn't like. He's, when you talk about moving a camera around and being overly flashy, I don't find that he's overly flashy. I find that, and you're right, the pacing I thought was pretty good. We'll start wrapping up, but we have to talk about about business, because this was one of the things that I was thinking about. Why is there a Transporter 4? And this is after 3, we even there was a very short-lived television series. 2 seasons that was on TV. So there was a Transporter television series that, to me, I'll be straight up, I didn't watch it. I barely knew that it was on and that it even lasted 2 series. But it seems that a Transporter television series, like if marketed right, could be like really, like I could see being the adventures of the Transporter in a weekly serial kind of a thing. I could see that happening. So this is a franchise in a sense. And again, I was looking back, the first Transporter movie, it grossed $25 million. Okay, the first one. Not a lot, but it did well enough. And again, when we're talking, the first one came out in 2002. So home video still had a little bit of oomph to it where it sort of kind of mattered, and people would watch it on home video. And then Transporter 2 comes out, and that movie does $43 million statewide, all in, not too shabby. And then Transporter 3 comes out and does $31 million. So it's in between there. So I was like, okay, those grosses aren't fantastic. Why are we going into a fourth? Because as you mentioned earlier, opening weekend for this one was what? 7? What did you say?
No, it's like
opening 7 million. Just like
7 million,
7,350,000.
right?
Yeah,
and right now
7.3.
we're at about 12, maybe all in for this one domestically. But we're okay. So now here's the interesting thing: worldwide, okay. Transporter 3, which I just said, of the first 3 movies was the lowest, it had 35 million, not the lowest grossing, but it was in the middle. It had $109 million worldwide box office. Yeah. Worldwide. And what's interesting to note about this Refueled movie, the first 2 were released by 20th Century Fox. The third one was released by Lionsgate. This one was released by EuropaCorp, which is Luc Besson's company. And it was the first... this is their first movie that they released independently, like in the States. I think they need a little help, but I mean, we've talked about this on the show where sometimes movies are made not for this audience. So it's almost like we're a lost leader. They know that it will do over here, but how's it going to do overseas where they can recoup a lot of this money? Because Transporter 3 making $100 million worldwide, to me, that sort of came as a shock. This one is already, seems to be doing better overseas than it does here. It'll be interesting to see when they open up in foreign territories, more territories, how it's going to do.
Exactly. Especially because, I mean, looking at, I believe the international, it went up for every movie, correct?
Yeah.
And that was, I think, in large part because of Mr. Statham.
I don't disagree.
Internationally.
His career was getting bigger.
I think that, yes, I do think it'll make up money overseas. The numbers will go up. But I don't think that it's gonna, I don't think they're gonna see those numbers again.
Well, I don't think they're gonna see 100 million from this, but worldwide gross is double what the domestic gross is. The other thing too is, believe it or not, Luc Besson carries weight overseas. You know, personally, I think he's fallen off of I'm not going to say a cliff. He's fallen off a ladder. I mean, I was not a big fan of Lucy. The stuff that he's produced lately, whether it be a Colombiana-esque movie, Taken 3, Taken 2, there was just awful.
I should have stopped at one.
Yeah, and but overseas he's really big, and this is the guy that did The Professional, which he'll still get somewhat of a pass for doing that movie for me, but it's just very interesting.
But also a very different type of story.
Absolutely. And you felt that, he's also the Fifth Element guy, and a lot of people are beholden to that movie. I don't like it as much as a lot of people.
was made for the international numbers.
I think so. Absolutely.
It's kind of sad that, you would hope that they would be pushing for 4 and another specifically transporter movie, because they have a specific transporter story that needs to be told, but unfortunately it just doesn't seem that that's what motivated.
And there were nuggets that could have been told. They could have made this.
And I think that another reason is that it's also why a lot of people just keep making the same type of movies and continuing franchises, because first of all, if you think about it, the first 3 it was overall, if you put it together, fairly successful franchise.
Sure.
I mean, that was not a tank whatsoever. It developed 3 movies.
No, and they never cost a lot to make either.
And then, if you think about it, everything for this film, for Refueled, is all upgraded. More fancy cars, more fancy technology, probably more fancy equipment that they were using. Yeah. So I can understand why they wanted just another film, because this is what today's society looks like.
Yeah, and
it gears to our demographic now. The people who enjoyed it now compared to the people who enjoyed it 10 years ago. Yeah. And technology has changed so much.
Technology has changed, and again, it's the way of distribution has changed as well. The movie had an estimated budget about $45 million, and that's with the hard drives and advertising and all that fun stuff. We'll see if it makes it back, but it got a 16% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's miserable.
That's lower than I thought it should be.
Way lower than I thought it was.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty low, but a B- on Cinema Score. that to me says that, I think, again, it's just hard to take over a role. Okay, I think it's hard to take over a role. I don't think it's like the director's fault. At Skrein, we agree, put his best foot forward to step into these shoes. I just think that people wanted Jason Statham. Maybe he is worth the 11 mil or not. I don't know, but I think Jason Statham, he's clear on a great path.
What
for
was
himself.
the P&A? It was 45.
45 million.
So it would have been. I mean, how much? I don't know if we can suppose how much Ed got paid, but I'm guessing it's
not as much as Jason would have.
No.
So just bump it up.
I think the promotion was
55.
also interesting. I know this movie, they had a big opening screening party at the Playboy Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you're surrounded by beautiful girls.
No, I was
There
away.
you
Okay, I was away for a month. But this I can tell you. Prior to me leaving, and I occasionally go to the movies. I occasionally turn on my TV. I had not seen a trailer for this movie in front of everything. And it was only when last night.
Saw one in the
what
theaters.
movie? What
I don't remember what movie I was also watching.
I saw
Did you see
I saw one
trailer? Do you
poster.
remember?
No, I did not
I saw
see
a
any trailer.
poster.
I think I saw an online trailer, which is
Okay,
funny because
yes.
I also, this is going off topic, but Maze Runner, the next one's coming out. Just saw the first trailer, and it was also online, and I was just like, this is just really random marketing this month.
Maze Runner I've seen, but this movie, prior to me leaving now, I was catching up on stuff on my DVR, and I was watching a 5-week-old episode or a 4-week-old episode of The Strain. There was a television spot for Transporter on there. I was like, oh, okay, so all right, so I just wasn't home. I was away when this happened.
I did not
market
see it.
I saw it in theaters, so the actual trailer for it in theaters. I can't tell you which movie I was watching, though.
The most marketing I saw was centered around Ed, and it was things that he were doing where it was next guy in action, and it was in a lot of
I saw billboards.
Yeah.
Billboards.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think we've talked Transporter Refueled. I'm not sure if there's anything else.
I'll just say my favorite action scene was when he was in that tight corner, not really a corner, but that hallways with the drawers. And he used that brilliantly done, and that was actually Luc Besson's idea because the Transporter in all the other movies, he's really well known to fight in tight locations. He's always surrounded by something in tight quarters, and this was that fight scene. I was like, yes, he's in a tight space. He has to use the environment. That was everything that I was expecting from Transporter.
Yeah, that was fun,
and it was still comedic. While watching it.
So, all right. Well, we should wrap up. Final thoughts on Transporter Refueled.
I don't think it did the first 3 any wrong. It was an entertaining film. I don't think it completely just trashed the whole franchise.
I agree.
There were really strong parts of the films. The story, not so much. But everything else actually wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I was entertained. I don't think that if I'm going to choose a Transporter movie, I'm going to choose one of the original 3. I look forward, though, to seeing more from Ed, and I look forward to seeing more of the women's model ads rather than acting debuts.
Yeah, I do have a newfound respect for Ed. I am looking forward to what is coming up. I agree with you. I don't think it did a disservice to the previous 3.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it takes it. I don't know if we'll get a 5. If we don't, I'm fine with it. If we do, let's see where they go. Let's see if I have a feeling that Ed here is going on to bigger and some better things. So they might have to pay him close to $11 million to get him back to do a Transporter movie within, because they seem to be on they almost seem to be on an every 3-4 year plan on these movies. So
some time.
Well, they have some time, and I have a feeling that he could get bigger. So, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us for Anatomy of a Movie at the Popcorn Talk Network, Transporter Refueled. We have, we are going into such an amazing fall period that I can't wait.
I'm so excited.
I know we have movies like The Visit. which I'm looking forward to. But above and beyond that, we have things like The Martian. We have things like Black
Everest.
Mass.
Star
We
Wars.
have Everest. That's in this. I'm just talking within the next 30 days.
What's the type one called?
I'm sorry, the what?
The Walk.
The Walk.
The Walk.
The Walk.
The
I
Walk.
mean, we have
Watch the
movies.
documentary first.
Yeah, we have movies within the next 30 days that we're going to put on our dissection slab here that you guys are going to go to the movies. We know it's a great slate of films for you to be going to the movies and then coming back and watch us and be part of our conversation. Thank you very much, movie fans, for listening and watching. Until next time, so long. The Walk, I can't wait for. The
Right.
Walk and Everest.
The Walk and
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie. Views expressed herein are those of the hosts only, not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.